it's all in the execution. I mean, you can find the greatest deal, get it closed, and then if you don't execute the business plan, what do you have? Like you said, you're going to leave. Your investors aren't going to invest with you again. You didn't deliver on your business plan. So I mean, a lot of it rides on that. I think asset management and CapEx. That's you got to execute those two things to get your business plan going.
Welcome to the Accelerated Investor Podcast with Josh Cantwell. If you love entrepreneurship and investing in real estate, then you are in the right place. Josh is the CEO of Freeland Ventures Real Estate Private Equity and has personally invested in well over 500 properties all across the country. He's also made hundreds of private lender loans and owns over 1,000 units of apartments. Josh is an expert at raising private money for deals, and he prides himself on never having had a boss in his entire adult life. Josh and his team also mentor investors and entrepreneurs from all over the world. He doesn't dream about doing deals. He actually does them, and so do his listeners and students. Now sit back, listen, learn, and accelerate your business, your life, and your investing with the Accelerated Investor Podcast.
So hey everybody, welcome back to Accelerated Investor. I am really excited to be hanging out with you today and hanging out with a new friend of mine. Jorge Abreu has been partnered up with me on an apartment deal, and I'm excited to be talking with him today. We're also excited to just be, kind of sharing. Obviously, we're in the middle of this coronavirus business, and we're operating a bunch of apartment buildings that he has and that we have, and we have one together. And we'll talk a little bit about, due diligence and CapEx, kind of some of the stuff that we're seeing happening with the virus, and also talk a little bit about George's his entrepreneurial journey, what's brought him and what got him excited about multifamily and apartments. To give you an idea, he owns over 1,700 units on the general partnership side, an additional 1,400 units on the LP side of his apartment business. His goal is to own over 10,000 units of apartments as a general partner, and also owns a commercial construction company. And they do all kinds of different commercial construction work, a lot on multifamily and industrial buildings, commercial buildings and things like that, which has kind of led him into wanting to own a lot of his own buildings, which he does now, which is amazing. He's also got a free ebook that he's going to tell us about at the end of this podcast. And so thanks again to all of you who've been joining me with Accelerated Investor. And George, welcome to the call, my friend. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, Josh. Thanks for having me, man. I know we've been trying to set this up for a couple months now and finally made it happen.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, I always like to ask our guests, what are they working on right now? Like literally today or this week. We can always go back and, do the whole background thing and talk about your transition and your entrepreneurial journey. But what are you working on right now?
So, right now with the coronavirus and everything, we've been focusing a lot on managing our existing properties, pushing some of the CapEx that makes sense to do right now. We've got 1,275 unit portfolio we closed on in end of November. Mm-hmm. So been working a lot on the CapEx for those properties. It's 5 properties. And then we're actually wrapping up the CapEx on the property we own together, the one in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So mainly that, and, still looking at some acquisitions, really looking for sellers that need to sell and have a specific issue. But we've got one that we've got under contract right now that we're working on getting closed.
Okay. Fantastic. So for some of our audience that might not know what's CapEx, maybe this is their first podcast they've ever listened to. You obviously have a commercial construction background. I've seen a lot of your pictures and video on Facebook. All of our audience, you guys should look up George and friend him on Facebook to see a lot of his stuff. He has a lot of good content he pushes out on his Facebook page. But just talk about CapEx, talk about your construction background. What does that mean? And what are some of the things that you guys are working on CapEx wise on that Houston portfolio and then Crosby Park as well?
For sure. So, CapEx is when somebody goes to purchase a building, It's pretty much the budget you're going to use to fix any of the deferred maintenance and then also any upgrades that you're going to make. So it's a very important piece to the whole puzzle. It's how you execute your business plan. So the more detailed you are during your due diligence before you purchase the property, the better. That way you don't run into a situation where you run out of the CapEx budget and you still have more upgrades you need to do. Nobody wants to be in that situation, and then you can't fully execute your business plan. When I started doing this, well, I guess I'll take you back to, so I started in single family residential investments over 13 years ago. And in that, as we continue to do more flips, so we started doing a lot of flip properties, I realized that there's not a lot of good contractors out there.
Yeah.
So I decided to open my own construction company. And since then, we focus on investors, we focus on business owners, so a lot of commercial and multifamily work, and it goes hand in hand with my own investments. So that's my way of knowing that the CapEx is going to get done and it's going to get done correctly.
Yeah. Super hands-on.
I'm not saying everybody needs to go open a construction company, but at least hire a professional that has a track record.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what advice, George, would you give to an apartment investor or maybe somebody that buys a portfolio of SFR, maybe, a large SFR portfolio? What advice would you give them about vetting out a good contractor? That's, it's definitely 80-20 or even 90-10, 10% or 20% of the contractors are decent and really 5% are probably really good. And 80 to 95% of them suck. So what kind of advice would you pass along to our audience that you've learned both for resi and for commercial about vetting out a good contractor and who to pick?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So I noticed when I first started with the construction company that a lot of investors don't take the time. Like they just want the cheapest price and they don't take the time to actually vet the contractors. And they end up getting burned a lot of times. So one would be, don't just go by price. And then two would be, take the time to one, look them up. If they don't have a business address, if they don't have an online presence nowadays, I mean, that's a red flag. The more reviews you can find online, the more, ask for some references. You'd be surprised if you call some of the references and they tell you bad things. I mean, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Kind of common sense, right? I mean, 101, like
right.
If you're going to be hiring an employee, you probably do reference checks or past, employment checks. And if you're going to spend $1 million, like Crosby Park,
right.
Over $1 million in improvements, and you were hiring a separate contractor, obviously you guys are doing a lot of the work and overseeing it, but man, you got $1 million in the line. And if that thing even gets 10 or 20% out of whack, it really screws up your numbers big time just to have to bring in an extra $100,000 or $200,000. So simple reference checks sounds like, wow, that's really stupid simple. Yeah, it is. But the problem is most people won't do it, right? They won't make the extra effort. Show me your portfolio. Let me talk to some owners, some previous people that you've worked with in the past. Show me some of your work that you've done. Let me talk to them. Was it on time and on budget? Basic kind of questions that you can get verification from a third party.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great. So you decided to start your own construction company to move while you're in single family. Tell us about that. Like, let's go now through your entrepreneurial journey and kind of your transition from single family to owning the construction company and then ultimately jumping into multis.
Yeah. So the plan was always to scale. So the construction company was a piece that I placed in there to be able to scale the fix and flips. But at some point, this was probably about 4 years ago now, kind of looked back at everything and I realized that everything I was doing was very transactional. We had a couple rentals and we had done some smaller multifamily, but I hadn't built that wealth. It was, like I said, very transactional. And there was only so much I could scale with the single family on the fix and flips. So that's when I started looking more into larger multifamily. I got introduced into what a syndication is, and how, before that, it never crossed my mind that I can own a 200 unit multifamily property.
Mm-hmm.
So, once I found out that was possible, I really started digging into that. And then I tried doing both for a little bit, the single family and the multifamily. And I quickly noticed that, just like Tony Robbins says, where you put your focus is where the energy goes. Mm-hmm. So I decided to drop the single family and just go all in on multifamily.
What was that transition like? A lot of people I think are, afraid, scared, fearful of that. They're like, well, the fix and flips are paying my bills and I'm making some good money. But as we all know, it's like you said, it's not a wealth builder. That comes from owning assets. I've been saying for years, funding equals freedom. And what I mean by that is funding, whether it's equity investors and debt and finding the right assets, allows you to buy cash flowing assets, which provides freedom. Funding equals freedom, right? So you obviously felt that a couple years ago. Many people would like to make that change, I think, many, but have the same kind of fears that you did. So how did you overcome that? What were some actual things that you did? Did you just say, hey, forget it, screw it, I'm just going to go buy something? Or how did that go for you?
No, I mean, the first step was stopping the inflow of the single family. So, we had the deals we were working on, so kind of had to stop the incoming leads and kind of just work on what we had. And then I think having the construction company probably helped me, because it wasn't, the thing with multifamily is it does take time to build up and get started. So, not getting paid for that amount of time could be difficult. I had the construction company, so that helped as far as cash flow and getting money from there. So maybe what I did is a little different. I would suggest, starting to put some focus towards multifamily if that's what you want to do, and not completely stop the money that's coming in, and then just continue to build it up to where you finally can.
Yeah. Got to have some way to pay the bills now, right? I think for a lot of people, when you're making a lot of money doing fix and flips or transactional work, whatever that transactional work is, wholesaling, whether it's even single family rentals or even construction, you kind of get used to a certain lifestyle, right? And I think it's about taking the long approach, the long game, to say, if I even take a step back in the next year or two with my income, that's okay. Because now I'm building something that's going to pay me for the rest of my life. And would you take a step back in income to end up building something that's true, long-term, permanent wealth? It's going to pay you forever. And many people get trapped into, hey, I'm going to keep doing these fix and flips and hopefully eventually I'll get into an apartment. And all of a sudden it's 20 years later and they're still doing single family. It's like, you got to have that kind of awakening moment, right? Where you're like, no, it's cool. It's okay. And again, if you have a family, if you have a spouse, if you have kids, it's something you got to kind of agree on as a family. Like, are we okay with taking sort of a sidestep here, even a back step, to really focus on forever income? And, you're not giving up that income forever. It might take 6 months, a year, even 2 or 3 years to stabilize a building until it starts to throw off massive cash flow. So was that a conversation that you had with your family? How did you guys kind of reconcile that you might have to take a step back in order to build for the long term?
Yeah, I mean, my wife she's always worked with me from day one. So we're always aligned, but it was a conversation, and it was going to be, conversation was more of, I was not going to be around as much. So when I started doing the multifamily, I decided to go all in. I mean, I was traveling every month. I was doing a ton of networking.
Dude, you go to like every event there is. When there were events, like I saw your profile, like, dude, you had all those lanyards, like thousands of them, it seemed like. You went to every event there was. It's nuts. It was great, man. But you, like you said, you went all in. You went to every event you could. You're hosting your own events. It was really like, you could tell it was very purposeful what you were doing. I'm going to go to every event. I'm going to speak at every event. I'm going to meet lots of people. Again, you're building relationships, taking the long approach. But right. Yeah, it had to be very heavy with all those lanyards around your neck.
Yes.
Yeah. But so you started traveling more, right? And because not every multifamily deal is going to be in your own backyard, right? They're not. It's not like they're all within an hour drive.
That was actually a huge. That helped with the growth was once I realized. So when I first started, I live in Dallas. I was just looking at properties in DFW, and I mean, we underwrote maybe 100+ deals and couldn't find anything that penciled until we finally said, started looking on the outskirts of Dallas or Oklahoma, and that's when things started to pencil and make sense. But there was that mindset, where you need to get over the fact that, okay, it's not going to be in my own backyard, but yeah.
Yeah. So when you find Crosby Park, right? And you're like, okay, it's in Oklahoma. It's 216 units. It pencils. Tell us what's going through your mind as far as now. Okay, now it's not close to home. I might need general partner, a limited partners, capital. You can do the construction. Let's just talk about that deal because we're partners in that deal. Let's talk about when you found it. Like you start getting excited, right? Because you're like, oh, this deal pencils, man. This is going to work. But oh crap, this is not like next door. It's not an hour drive. It's the next state over. So tell us about your mindset there.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is putting the pieces together, right? To make the deal, to get the deal to close. So first thing is, okay, where can we raise this equity internally? Do we need a partner that's good at raising equity? Do we qualify for the loan? Do we need a partner to help us qualify for the loan? How am I going to do the CapEx? My construction company's never done a project in Oklahoma. Can we do this? All those things are going through my mind. And then it's just kind of plug and play. As you know, we brought you in as a partner. We brought Tim in as a partner. And we just put everything together and got it closed. And that's any deal. That's how we look at every deal. We're always open to partner with others, and just as long as we get the deal closed and everybody complements each other.
Are you ready to automate and explode your real estate investing? We're searching for extremely motivated individuals who are sick and tired of wasting time and want to finally see real results from their real estate investing business. We're searching for investors looking to get to the next level and become a bigger, better version of themselves while being a more successful real estate investing entrepreneur. Apply for mentoring and coaching at joshcantwellcoaching.com/podcast. That's joshcantwellcoaching.com/podcast. Yeah, I mean, in any multifamily deal, like large, apartment, you're going to have, again, somebody's got to kind of be the boots on the ground to run the project, find the project. You have to have somebody who can qualify for the loan, or multiple people that can qualify the loan as basically a sponsor, and somebody that's can sign the PG, the personal guarantee. Then you've got potentially other general partners who do other things like underwriting, raising money, etc. Then you've got the equity investors that bring in the down payment. And hey, look who showed up. You want to say hi, Dom? Dom, I've invited Dom to just crash all my webinars, all my podcasts. Nice. That's where we're at with this. So I told Dom it's all right. You can pop in and say hi to the people on the podcast. Want to say hi to George?
Hi.
Hello, buddy.
Mom said we could watch TV for a while.
Okay, go watch TV. That's cool.
You know where the remote is?
I don't know where the remote is.
I thought you took it.
No, I didn't take it. All right, I got to get back to this, buddy.
Where'd you put it?
So
that's awesome. Yeah,
Dom's been hanging out, right? So when Dom was born, he's 8, almost 9. At my other house, you used to have, I didn't have a lock on my office. He would just crash all the time. So like 6 years ago, when he could walk, he was like 2, he'd get down the stairs and things. He started crashing podcasts and webinars. And I just have always had an open policy. Like I could get really mad. Like, dude, we're recording. What are you doing? And then like, what example would I be setting as a father, not only to my own kids, but our audience? So my audience knows we won't even cut that part out. We'll just roll with it and just let Dom hang out. Hey, it's cool, man.
I don't know. Have you seen that video of somebody being interviewed on a news broadcast?
Yeah, it's great. Baby rolls in and like one of those little strollers, and the second kid comes in. That's great. So we were just talking about the whole partnership, right? So So let's talk about Crosby Park for a minute. So we found Crosby. Let's talk through this deal. I've actually got it up on my screen. The rental income at acquisition was about $1.5 million, about 12% vacancy. Expenses were about $800,000, and net operating income was about $500,000, $540,000. And the goal was to, again, modernize the building, make the capital improvements. We were going to do about $1.2 million in improvements, renovation budget for unit turns as well as CapEx and stuff like that. And so the goal was put the renovations in, modernize the building, improve the units, increase the rent, and then ultimately refinance within about 18 to 24 months, refinance and refi the bridge loan out and refi the equity investors out, and then have a stabilized building with stabilized financing. And so we bought this deal. It was back in June of 2019. So we're coming up on almost a year, about 10 months or so. So just describe the last 10 months, George, since we close on it. We're through a pretty significant portion of the renovations. About $700,000 or $800,000 of the CapEx is done, but a little bit is still kind of ongoing. So just talk through where are we at today for our audience that doesn't know that deal.
Yeah, so today we've completed all the interior upgrades that we're going to do. There was a chunk of vacant units when we first closed on it, so that was our main focus, was working on the interior units and getting that caught up so that we had upgraded units that we could lease. Once we got a good portion of those going, then we started working on the exteriors and getting everything looking good there. We're about done with the exteriors minus a couple. I think we got the parking lots are getting done on Monday, and then exterior paint is also getting done next week. So we're about, I can't remember exactly we're right about 90%, I believe, on the occupancy. So, under a year, and we're getting pretty close to being stabilized and ready for that refi.
Yeah. The plan was really the two levers to pull, and we've talked about this on other podcasts. We don't need to talk about it again, but most apartment deals are long-term syndication, right? And you've done those, like your Houston portfolio was a long-term. This is more of a quick 24 to 18 months kind of in and out. And again, we bought it. It was at about 87% occupied. And the goal was to turn the units, make them nicer, improve those, then charge more for rent. And now, like George said, we're at 90% occupied, and with nicer units and increased rents. And out of the 1.2 million of CapEx that we were going to spend about 90% of that's done. So you've got 300,000 give or take left to finish. And then the goal is in kind of Q3, Q4, finalize building that occupancy up even higher, really pushing the income as high as we can, and getting ready to refinance. Hopefully by the end of the year. George, tell us about the virus for this building, your Houston portfolio, other things. How has the virus impacted your ability to do CapEx or do unit turns and leasing? Can you tell us about what's going on kind of in real time with the virus impact?
Yeah, as far as the CapEx items, we really haven't had any major hiccups. Here in Texas, construction was deemed essential. So for the most part, the only thing we've had issues with is maybe some, and that's not even with our multifamily renovations. That's with a new development, ground up. Some specialty items have been hard to get, but so that part's gone pretty smooth. We've actually gotten a ton done in the past 6-7 weeks. Then with the leasing, that's become a little more difficult, and I don't want to say difficult because we are leasing units. We've just had to adapt. The leasing offices are open, but they're appointment only. Trying to push everything to be, or as much as we can, as far as online. Doing virtual tours, and if as far as work orders on the properties, just sticking to the emergency work orders. and then making sure to keep our staff safe. You know, there's guidelines that we've put out there as far as masks and gloves. I know in Houston, no one's able to enter the office without having a mask or a glove, and same thing with maintenance. If they come in, they need to have their masks and gloves. So
yeah,
working through it.
What are your thoughts on where we're at today? Like, just do you feel like things are unthawing? Do you think they're getting a little easier? Do you think some of the fear is gone, or where do you think we're at in kind of the cycle? I know everybody's kind of experience with this is very personal and regional, right? So just kind of what are your thoughts on where you guys are at?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very area specific, but as far as the areas we're in, I'm feeling pretty good about it. Both Texas and Oklahoma have opened back up. They're going to keep opening back up. You know, I believe it's Friday. Texas is opening salons and other things. So I think we're doing good on that end. I'm curious to see what happens with, you know, hopefully we don't have another peak or a second wave like they're saying, that everybody continues to be smart about this.
Right.
That's really my only fear. And then it's how long does the economy take to get back? You know, there's going to be some businesses that are not going to survive, you know, and how's that going to affect everything? As far as collections today, we did pretty well in April, better than we thought, honestly. We did jump ahead of it and get in front of it, but May's starting to come in. It seems so far it's been a little bit less than April, so I'm really curious to see how we do in May and then come June as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, referencing back to Crosby Park, for our audience to kind of understand what the goal is. You know, we were all into that building. It was a $6.1 million purchase, 1.2 of renovation, all in for basically $7.7 million. Got a bridge loan for 5.9, and then private investors for 1.8 million. And the goal was, again, through those, the reason why I'm asking, the reason why this is important is because what George and I and Tim and all of our apartments, what we're looking at is stabilization. And a bank is going to look at the numbers to see, well, how many units did you have? How many units were occupied? And then how many units were actually collected, right? How many people actually paid, not just occupied, but paid. And you really got to be at that 90% occupancy or better to turn around and qualify for an agency loan with Fannie and Freddie. So that's always been our goal. And we anticipate, based on these increased rents with this particular project, to be at a value of about $10.5 to $11 million in order to refinance. So what's important for us now is to kind of manage what's going on with May, what's going on with June, what's going on with July. And that's going to be important, but that might be a short-term hiccup, right? George says at the end of the year, what we really need to see is, like in Q4 or Q1 of 2021, we need to see 3 months of 90% occupancy or better to qualify for a new agency loan. And at that time, we got to be, you know, increased rents, 90% occupancy for 90 days. And then you kind of qualify for that. And the good news there is the Fannie Freddie money is so cheap right now. It's ridiculous. So even if we have a short-term hiccup or some short-term challenges, that's why I really look more at the long term, right? What's going to happen really by the end of Q3, beginning of Q4, because we've got to position that building and your other buildings for these refinances that are going to take place around the end of the year. And really, George, nobody has a crystal ball, right? Like nobody knows. We can all say we think, but really what's going to happen with May and then what's going to happen with June and July is going to be very, very important. April was very strong. A matter of fact, I do want to put a plug in, and we'll put a note in the show notes. George wrote a great article on LinkedIn. I just read it the other day. It was published on April 21st, about a month ago by the time this is published, talking about the coronavirus effects on multifamily investors, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I found this to be very, very, very well written, lots of good bullet points, lots of things to consider. And again, I think the point of this is nobody has a crystal ball, but we're doing everything we can to be proactive. So we'll put that in the show notes and make sure people take a look at that. It's really good. Matter of fact, George, this is really good to even turn into like a little bit of a white paper or some sort of ebook.
Nice.
Because
I hadn't
there's
even thought about that.
Yeah, it's really good. By the way, George does have an ebook on his website, Elevate CIG, Elevate Commercial Investment Group, elevatecig.com. It's got a great ebook. Everything you need to know as a passive investor in multifamily syndication. You guys should all go grab that ebook and also, jump on George's email marketing list. You can get his content and his information. So George, let's talk about kind of last piece here of this interview. Let's talk a little bit about tactics and specifics. You mentioned earlier, you looked at 100 deals in Dallas that didn't pencil, and then deals outside of DFW started to pencil when you're more on the outskirts. Walk us through some of your specific bullet points that you do during your due diligence and your evaluation of CapEx. What are some of the numbers, some of the things that you're looking at when you're looking at pro formas or actuals and you're looking at penciling this thing out? What are some of the major things that you look at tactically to say, wow, this deal does pencil out. This is something I've got to do more looking at. This is something that could go. Tell us about your process there.
Sure. So the first thing is, we look at it at a pretty high level to see if it's even worth digging into. Once we've gotten past that, then I want to think that we dig in a little bit more than others on the CapEx. So the broker or the seller, we're going to ask them a ton of questions about what they've done as far as CapEx. I want to see the last time the roofs were replaced. I want to see, any other major CapEx that they've completed. Interior units, I want to know exactly how many of them are upgraded, how many of them are not. If there's a medium upgrade, how many are those? Then when I'm actually on-site inspecting, I want to make sure myself, or if I need a professional to come in, like for the plumbing, I want to make sure we camera all the lines and we know whether we have breaks or not, or other issues that we got to deal with. Same thing if you got a boiler or a furnace, I want to get those checked. A chiller, you definitely want to get that checked, because that could be a $20,000, $40,000 line item.
Yeah, big time.
Same thing with the roofs. That could be another big ticket item. And then a lot of the times I see investors do a okay job checking the deferred maintenance, and then they kind of just guess on the upgrades. I mean, the upgrade is a big portion of it.
Right.
I'd rather know exactly what it's going to cost me, or at least pretty close to it. So we dig in pretty deep into the upgrades too. If we're gonna, something we've been doing a lot is wrapping the balconies with cedar. Okay, well, I want to know how many, what it's going to cost. If we're going to paint the exterior, I want to know exactly what it's going to cost us to paint the exterior, et cetera. And that way I have, okay, it's going to cost $1 million for deferred maintenance, $500,000 for upgrades. This project's going to be plus or minus 5% of 1.5 million. But a lot of times I see investors close on a deal and they're like, yeah, we guessed 1 million. And then they actually start digging in and getting numbers, and it's a $2 million project. It's like, okay, now what?
My newest and most powerful real estate investing book, The Flip System, is now available. And for a limited time, you can grab your free copy at getflipsystem.com/podcast. Using the same proven principles, secrets, and investing strategies I'm sharing in this book, I've been able to personally close over 750 highly profitable real estate deals over the last 15 years, make over 400 private lender loans, raise over $30 million of private money, and acquire over 2,000 units of apartments. Get my newest book now for free for a limited time at getflipsystem.com/podcast. That's getflipsystem.com/podcast. Well, part of it, as you and I know, is in Kevin O'Leary, when he spoke at my event, and actually was in 2016 in Dallas at the Renaissance. And we were talking before he went on stage, and we spent a lot of time afterwards. He said, look, when you take investors into your business, you realize that even if you're the CEO, everything you do now is to take care of those investors. They really are the CEO. They're everything about your business. And your number one objective is to get your investors their principal back and generate them a great return, and then also have them have a great experience. So in that order, get their principal back, generate a return, have an unbelievable experience. And as you and I know, like if you screw up the CapEx budget and all of a sudden you have investors, well, you're $500,000 short. You've jeopardized the return of principal. You've jeopardized their return and now given them a terrible experience, and they're not going to come back. So everything that we're really doing is with at least one eye on those limited partner investors, because they're a big key to make this thing go. You got to find a great property. You've got to get the financing on the first mortgage debt. But those people that are making that investment in the equity. So George, just talk about how important that is relative to the CapEx, relative to the business plan, about making sure that you execute on it, you project it right, so that LPs can have a great experience, because then they're going to come back and tell all their friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the execution. I mean, you can find the greatest deal, get it closed, and then if you don't execute the business plan, what do you have? Like you said, you're going to leave. Your investors aren't going to invest with you again. You didn't deliver on your business plan. So, I mean, a lot of it rides on that. I think asset management and CapEx, you got to execute those two things to get your business plan going. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's super important. I did want to mention something. I know it has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
But as far as the outlook on coronavirus, my long-term outlook is still bullish on multifamily. I'm still all in on multifamily. I'm just curious what's going to happen these couple of months, but I don't see, at least on my deals, and probably the same with your deals that we don't have together, when we purchase ours, we're looking for true value adds at a wholesale price. There's been a lot of investors that bought at retail or above retail, and those are the ones that scare me the most. Yeah. Because, if you said, I think Crosby was 10 million something is what we, if we come a couple 100,000 short of that, or the other thing is we don't have to sell right away. So, I mean, right. it's more long-term. So I have no doubt that we'll get to that value again. But if somebody bought something above retail and they have to sell coming up, they're most likely not going to get that.
They're going to get slaughtered. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that sticks out about being bullish on multifamily and what you said is, I remember hearing from one of my broker buddies that he called me up, said, "Hey, Josh, you got a great value add multifamily opportunity." And I'm like, "Cool, Anthony, what do you got?" And he sends it to me, and it's like $112,000 a door and like a 5.5 cap. And so the word value add wholesale price is like the most overused, I mean, totally butchered word in the multifamily space. You got to find true value add where there is CapEx opportunities, there is deferred maintenance, and the seller's willing to sell at a discounted, distressed wholesale price. Not a guy who's like, "Yeah, I did some upgrades 15 years ago, and I still want to get something pretty much at a retail price or over retail." And that's basically what the broker was selling, but he positioned it as, "Oh, it's great distressed multifamily value add opportunity." I'm like, "No, Anthony, this is not anything like what I just described. Not even close." But right. You hear that so often, you can't, as an investor, you can't just, when I hear that, I think, okay, send me the deal. Like you said, I'll take a look at it.
Right.
But I don't take any of that to be gospel or, the truth of this is actually how it's going to go. I mean, if we're going to put in $10 million and a couple million of investor equity, it's got to be, we got to drag that thing through the mud before we buy it,
Yep.
Well, fantastic, George. Listen, it's been great visiting with you today. A couple things my listeners have got to check out. One is, again, we'll put it in the show notes. George wrote a great article on LinkedIn. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to share with you. It was published on April 21st. Thought it was real honest bullet points of what's going on with the market. For sure, check that out. Number 2, on their website, again, Elevate CIG, Elevate Commercial Investment Group. A great ebook on what to look for as a passive investor, everything that you need to know. And George, if any of our audience wanted to reach out to you personally, whether it was to invest in your deals or network with you or have questions, what's the best place for them to reach you?
Yeah, they can shoot me an email. It's George, Jorge, at elevatecig.com.
Fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So George, any kind of parting shots, final words of encouragement, words of advice, or any kind of final tips before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I do see the light at the end of the tunnel now. And I think we just got to keep pushing forward, and things are going to get better for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a health scare. It's a major health scare. It's not Armageddon. It's not the end of the world. I think there's going to be some opportunities in the next 3 to 18 months to buy some stuff at a discount. So there is going to be some positives out of this. And just like anything else, tell my audience, stay safe, take care of yourself and your family, but continue to stay liquid. Lots of dry powder. There's going to be some deals out there for sure. And I appreciate all of you jumping on and listening again at Accelerated Investor. George, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Josh.
You've been listening to Josh Cantwell and the Accelerated Investor Podcast. Leave a comment on our iTunes channel and let us know what you want to learn next or who you'd like Josh to interview. While you're there, give us a 5-star rating and make sure to subscribe so you can be the first to hear new episodes. Follow Josh Cantwell and his companies, Strategic Real Estate Coach and Freeland Ventures, on all social media platforms now, and stay up to date on new training and investment opportunities. To start your journey toward the lifestyle you've always dreamed of, apply for coaching at joshcantwellcoaching.com.